Mide was a stunner, seriously. 25, with gorgeous dark skin that glowed, and a baby face that made her look even younger. She was on the chubbier side, rocking a big bust and a bulgy stomach, but still, she carried herself with this natural warmth. Greg, her husband, was also a looker, tall, dark, and handsome, from a seriously wealthy Lagos family. He was slim, no muscles really, but always had a super clean, low-cut hairstyle. Their wedding was straight out of a magazine, a real Lagos fairy tale, full of laughter and the promise of forever. But even fairy tales have their plot twists. Mide was still job hunting, low-key stressing about her in-laws pulling strings for a major role at an oil servicing company. Big expectations, you know? And then her doctor dropped the bombshell. If she wanted to conceive easily, she needed to shed some weight. Mide was already a bit sensitive about her body, especially her stomach, so that news hit hard. She started feeling like she wasn't enough for Greg. Not the perfect trophy wife his family probably expected. "Greg," she'd say, her voice a little shaky, "I just feel so much pressure. What if I can't? What if I disappoint everyone?" Greg would pull her into a hug, but his reassurances sometimes felt a bit hollow. He'd say, "Babe, don't worry, we'll figure it out. Just focus on getting healthy." But deep down, Mide sensed his own unspoken anxieties about her appearance and their future family. So Mide decided to hit the gym, a super exclusive, high-end one in Ikoyi. She was determined, picturing a fitter, healthier version of herself, ready for motherhood and ready to shut down any unspoken judgments. She walked into that gym feeling a mix of hope and intense self-consciousness, especially with her bulgy stomach. What she didn't know was that Greg, consumed by his own insecurities and the fear of gossip in their elite circles, had cooked up a seriously messed up plan. He hired a personal trainer, Charles, to basically spy on Mide. Greg wanted to make sure his wife was behaving and wasn't attracting any unwanted attention while she was out there trying to get fit. Major trust issues, right? Charles was. Wow. He was well chiseled, with impressive biceps, triceps, and a proper six-pack that seemed sculpted from stone. His spiky, short dreadlocks framed a face that was both serious and incredibly kind. From their first session, he was everything Greg wasn't in that moment. Attentive, genuinely encouraging, and he actually listened when Mide spoke. He didn't just bark orders. He explained why they were doing certain exercises, adapting them to her body and her current fitness level. He never made her feel bad about her bulgy stomach or her big bust, focusing instead on her strength and progress. He'd make her laugh with his funny analogies for deadlifts and squats, and he celebrated every tiny victory with a sincere high five. Gradually, the gym stopped being just about Mide losing weight. It became her sanctuary, her escape from the stifling pressure at home. And Charles became the undisputed highlight of her day. He made her feel seen, beautiful, strong, things she hadn't genuinely felt from Greg in a while, especially with all the baby pressure and his subtle, often unintentional, criticisms. Their conversations stretched beyond reps and sets, diving into dreams and fears. Charles would share his own struggles, his vision of opening his own unique fitness studio, built on holistic wellness. Mide found herself confiding in him about the relentless job hunt, the looming baby expectations, and that gnawing feeling of not being enough. She told him about her insecurities, how she sometimes felt like she was drowning in expectations. Charles would nod, his eyes full of understanding, making her feel less alone. The emotional connection between them deepened, fast, and it was dangerous. It wasn't about the physical anymore. It was an intense, soul-deep understanding. Mide found herself looking forward to their time together like an addict. She was shedding the weight, sure, but she was also shedding the feeling of being judged, and that was addictive. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, Mide was sitting on the mat, catching her breath. The gym was quiet, bathed in the soft orange glow of the Lagos sunset filtering through the huge windows. She was talking about how tough it was to navigate her mother-in-law's constant questions about when they'd have a child. Charles just sat beside her, not saying anything, just letting her speak. When she finished, a single tear tracked down her cheek. Without thinking, Charles reached out and gently wiped the tear away with his thumb. Their eyes locked, his intense and genuine, hers wide with surprise and a frightening rush of emotion. In that charged, silent moment, everything shifted. It was an unspoken, terrifying confession of feelings that went way beyond squats and cardio. Mide was falling, hard. She felt a terrifying, exhilarating lightness around Charles that she hadn't felt since before her wedding. The guilt was a heavy blanket, especially when she went home. She started dreading being in the same space as Greg, who was constantly trying to check her phone or subtly interrogate her about her day. His questions, even when masked as concern, felt like tiny darts of possession. She started lying about how long her gym sessions were, feeling a toxic mix of shame and defiance. She was married, but emotionally, she was practically dating Charles. The inevitable happened a few weeks later. Mide was noticeably leaner, radiating a new confidence that Greg found unsettling. He started picking fights over small things, a late dinner, a damp towel. His paranoia, fueled by his deep-seated insecurity, was on full blast. He logged into his bank account and saw the hefty sum he'd paid Charles for the personal training/spying arrangement. He'd barely heard from Charles recently, only vague updates that Mide was focused on her goals. He lost it. He drove straight to Charles's small apartment, catching him completely off guard. The confrontation was ugly. "You took my money, now what's the report? Is my wife seeing anyone at that place? You're supposed to be watching her." Greg spat, his usually composed face contorted with rage. Charles, who had genuinely developed feelings for Mide and hated the deception, just stared at the floor. "Mr. Greg, I quit. I can't do this anymore. She's a good woman, and she deserves better than this surveillance." "Surveillance? She's my wife. And what do you mean, you quit? Is that why she's suddenly glowing? Did you touch my wife, you low-life instructor?" Greg screamed. Charles, his six-pack straining against his vest, finally looked up, his voice low and dangerous. "I didn't need to touch her, Greg. I just listened to her. Something you clearly forgot how to do." That comment, a knife to Greg's ego, made him snap. A physical struggle ensued, but Charles, muscled and quick, easily shoved Greg away. The raw, messy truth about the setup finally tumbled out of Charles, fueled by his anger and regret. The crushing revelation. The fight ended with Charles threatening to expose Greg's controlling behavior, and Greg, panicked, storming home. He waited for Mide, the betrayal burning a hole in his chest. When Mide walked in, glowing slightly from a late, exhilarating workout, the one where Charles had just told her he was leaving the gym, without giving a real reason, Greg didn't even try to soften the blow. He threw Charles's receipt down, the one detailing the confidential spousal fitness monitoring fee. "What were you doing with him, Mide? Huh? Did you think I wouldn't find out? You think you can just go behind my back? I had to hire someone just to make sure my wife wasn't disgracing me." Mide picked up the receipt, her hands trembling. It was worse than an affair. It was a complete, deliberate shattering of trust. Her husband, the man who promised forever, had hired a spy to monitor her under the guise of helping her. You thought I was cheating? You thought so little of me that you planted a man in my life." Her voice was a low, devastating whisper, quieter and more dangerous than any scream. He wasn't supposed to be an instructor, he was supposed to be your eyes. I did it to protect our marriage. To protect you, Greg shouted back, his voice cracking. No, Greg. You did it to protect your ego. You betrayed me before I even had the chance to betray you. The arguments that followed were brutal, cold, and final. The truth about Charles's initial role was the poison that killed the marriage. Mide saw Greg for who he truly was, deeply insecure and unforgivingly controlling. The fact that she had genuinely fallen for Charles, the spy her husband had hired, was the agonizing twist of fate. Charles, the one person who had truly seen her, had vanished. He felt like the ultimate punishment for Greg's mistrust and Mide's wandering heart. Greg was begging, pulling the rich kid card, reminding her of his family's reputation and the job waiting for her. He kept saying, Mide, it was a mistake. I love you. I was just scared. But Mide couldn't unsee the betrayal. The job, which she eventually got, thanks to those powerful in-laws, making the whole situation even stickier, felt like a gilded cage. She was working in the oil servicing company, making serious money, wearing sharp suits, but her soul felt bruised and empty. She had lost the weight, her body now lean and toned from the months with Charles, but the confident glow she'd briefly found was replaced by a cold veneer of professionalism. Their home became a luxury prison. They lived together for appearances, hosting dinners for Greg's high society parents, putting on a perfect show of the happy, successful young couple. But the minute the door closed, the silence was deafening, the air thick with the unspoken truth. They slept in the same bed, miles apart. One rainy Saturday afternoon, Mide was driving through Lekki, lost in thought, when she saw him. The sad, final encounter. It was Charles. He was outside a small independent gym, not a massive bougie place, but a cozy spot with a bright, hand-painted sign, Achieve Fitness, Train Smarter. He was talking animatedly to a vendor, his six-pack still ridiculously defined under a simple gray t-shirt, his spiky dreadlocks slightly longer now. He looked happy, fulfilled, pursuing the dream he'd told her about. Mide pulled over, her heart hammering against her ribs. She hesitated, fingers clutching the steering wheel, the weight of her expensive wedding ring suddenly feeling unbearable. After a few deep breaths, she got out of the car, her corporate heels clicking softly on the pavement. Charles. He turned, and the smile instantly dropped from his face. His eyes, usually so warm, now held a deep, troubled sadness. Mide, he whispered, stepping away from the vendor. Wow. You look incredible. I got the job. I lost the weight. Everything the doctor and your former employer wanted. She tried to smile, but it felt brittle. You achieved your dream, I see. I'm happy for you. They stood there awkwardly, two strangers who knew too much about each other's secrets. I'm sorry, Mide. For everything, Charles finally said, his voice thick with emotion. I should have told you. I hated lying to you. When I started actually caring about you, it was hell. Mide looked down at her hands. I fell in love with you, Charles. The guy Greg hired to spy on me. That's the messed up part. Charles took a painful step closer, his biceps flexing slightly. I know. And I loved how you saw me. Not the rich kid or the wife, just Mide. But you're married. To the man who... Well. And I was the lie. We can't rewind this. A single tear escaped Mide's eye, but she quickly wiped it away, the corporate veneer snapping back into place. No. We can't. She looked at his gym, his true passion, then back at him. She knew that any attempt to be together would destroy his burgeoning dream and turn her life into a scandalous mess that Greg and his family would never allow her to escape. She was trapped by the consequences of their mutual deceptions. "Goodbye, Charles." "Really this time?" She didn't wait for his response. She turned and walked back to her expensive SUV, her shoulders set straight and rigid. She heard him call her name once, a plea quickly swallowed by the city noise, but she didn't look back. Mide drove home, back to her mansion, back to Greg, back to the perfect miserable life she was now obligated to live. She had everything society prescribed: wealth, status, beauty, a high-flying career. But the one thing she craved, a genuine, honest connection, was locked away in a small gym on the other side of Lagos, forever out of reach. Her wedding vows hadn't been broken by an affair, but by a crippling lack of trust, leaving her beautiful, successful, and eternally heartbroken. The fairy tale had become a long, lonely reality. Mide had everything: beauty, wealth, and success, yet lost the one thing that mattered most: trust. Her husband's fear destroyed their love, and the man who truly saw her became just a memory. In the end, she learned that you can have it all and still have nothing real.